Hey guys, welcome back to Out of Left Field. Graham and Chris back here with you again. The trade deadline has passed. We are now in the thick of the waiver trade deadline, a little bit different, and we will get into the differences here in a little bit as we go through our grade the trade and give you our power rankings. But as we put the ball in play, a really surprising story and jumped off the table at us as we were getting ready to start the show. And that was a report from The Athletic that Mike Scioscia, the longest active tenured manager. What?
Angels.
What did I say?
Athletics.
No. I said it was reported by The Athletic.
Oh, right. My bad.
It's cool. Glad. I'm sorry. I'm Graham. Chris is now joining us. Good to have you here.
Hi, everyone.
But reported by The Athletic. LA Angels manager Mike Scioscia, there is a report that he is wildly denying that he will be resigning his position at the end of the year.
Wildly denying?
Hey, when Mike Scioscia uses the word poppycock, that to me is wild denial.
I agree. And, this is one of those things that somebody said something, somebody heard something, and it's uncorroborated, and they just ran with it. I'm not going to get into the whole. That's the state of the media that we live in now, but it kind of is.
Ken Rosenthal is the voice behind the report, and he is. That's a pretty credible baseball reporter there. So
I will say this. If Ken Rosenthal is the one who broke this story and Mike Scioscia turned around and says poppycock, then one of two things is going on. Rosenthal has information he shouldn't, or Rosenthal has false information. Either way, it is irresponsible of him to report it without talking first to Mike Scioscia to try to corroborate this story before breaking it in The Athletic.
Hey, man, you can't always trust a guy who wears a bow tie. You just can't.
But that's not what Bill Nye the Science Guy taught me.
Different take. Anyway, no, look, I respect Rosenthal. I really enjoy a lot of his reporting. He and Buster Olney are probably two of the guys that I follow the most, mainly because they're probably the two biggest baseball reporters. But I feel like they have some of the best kind of wide-ranging feel for the game. To me, I think Buster is just I like his reporting a smidge more. But again, that's neither here nor there. They're both doing the things that you and I would be dying to do. But really, the thing with me, this is just. I guess I could kind of see it coming if the Angels were still struggling and there wasn't an end in sight to the struggle. You know what I mean? But this year with the signing of Ohtani, the move for Zach Cozart, Trout is healthy. Granted, he's on the not on the DL, but he's been out a couple of games, I think 4 or 5 games, because he jammed his wrist sliding head first, which again is an injury we keep seeing with him because, Trout is just that kind of player. He's a hard-nosed player. He plays hard. Sometimes, it's going to happen. But, they made a ton of moves. They also, you got to remember, they get Justin Upton in the offseason. They made some really, really important pieces. And before Ohtani got hurt, we were looking at this team as really being a legitimate contender for that wild card spot, most likely number 2. So I don't know. I get this is the last season of his deal, and he had a 10-year, $50 million contract. And it's been 19 years. He's got a ring. I know, much to your chagrin, in 2002 because he beat the Giants in a series that he probably shouldn't have. But the Giants' lives flash before their eyes, and they almost trample Dusty Baker's, teeny bop son, who was 3 years old as a bat boy, and
right,
scoop him up running across the plate. But I don't know, man. It is so hard for me to wrap my mind around why, unless there is a health issue or there is some kind of discord between front office and him that doesn't seem to be wide spreading or really boiling over, but just maybe a desire to look in different directions. But 19 years and you haven't moved on from him in the last several years where it would have made the most sense to do so. It's just really hard for me to understand why now that kind of story would come out, assuming there is some veracity to it.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense that Mike Scioscia would step down without telling somebody. And when he goes back and he's trying to explain, look, this is something that is not coming from me. It's not coming from my camp in any way. He says, and I quote, "Nothing has changed since I spoke on this last October. I'm focused on this year, and I'll talk to Art." That's Art Moreno, the Angels owner, John Carpino, the Angels president, and Billy Appler, the Angels general manager, after the season. He's been sort of pat on that he was going to talk about this after the season. This is something he would bring up and let everyone know when he had come to a decision. I doubt he's going to throw a wrench into any possible remainder of a season that the Angels have by saying, hey, you know what? It's August, the beginning of August. I know there's 2 months of the season left, but at the end of this year, I'm done. That destroys a clubhouse.
Right. And I mean, to be fair here, to kind of back up Rosenthal's report, Bob Nightingale of USA Today also, he is quoted as saying, or at least reported, that Scioscia decided before the season began this was going to be his final year as a manager with the Angels, or anybody. Scioscia was going to retire, but then Scioscia told media, including Mike DiGiovanna of the LA Times, not someone obviously we read too much out here, quote, "This is insanity. That's it," close quote. Pretty strong denial from Scioscia. And if he was getting ready to retire, you think that would be one of those things where you tell the ball club, hey guys, let's finish the year out strong. It's been almost 2 decades for me. I want you to know I'm gonna move on. But again, I think it's one of those things that he would have already talked with his ball club about because of the feel that he has for the pulse of that team, and the way that this report comes out, and with the intensity that he is denying it. It's just it's really, really hard to hear this and at least not raise an eyebrow.
Right. And listen, Mike Scioscia is the longest tenured manager in Major League Baseball. And
not for the Athletics.
Not for the Athletics, of course. But saying Mike Scioscia is the longest tenured manager in Major League Baseball currently may not put things into perspective about Mike Scioscia. Mike Scioscia is the 5th longest tenured manager in the history of Major League Baseball. Only 4 managers have managed a single team for more consecutive seasons than Mike Scioscia. And all 4 of those managers are Hall of Famers. Connie Mack, Walter Alston, Bobby Cox, and Tommy Lasorda. 50 years with Connie Mack. Just Connie Mack. 23 for Walter Alston. 21 and for both Bobby Cox and Tommy Lasorda. 19 years put Scioscia at number 5 on that list. To walk away from something like that.
And didn't you tell me, not to interrupt, sorry, but didn't you tell me that in relation to Cox and Lasorda, that he actually was it a better winning percentage, or he has more total wins than they did?
He has more total wins than Terry Francona.
That's what it was.
Bobby Cox and Tommy Lasorda, all of whom are Hall of Fame managers.
Right, and granted,
or future Hall of Fame managers.
Yeah, I think Tito's comes more on the heels of having 2 rings and taking, 2 different ball clubs to the World Series. But so your question is what? Is Scioscia going to be a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, Does tenure make you a Hall of Famer? Because in my opinion, I don't think it does. I think that tenure with a long tenured manager with consistent success does. But I don't know that Mike Scioscia really meets that, especially in the last 5 or 6 years with the Angels. I don't think that Mike Scioscia really meets that criteria.
And that's the hard part for me. And maybe it's one of those moments where once he steps away and you can kind of look back on the entire thing as a whole, then maybe our mind changes a little bit. We talk about that a manager has to be able to take what he's given in that clubhouse and find a way to make it work. We saw the Tigers try to do that with Prince Fielder, Miggy Cabrera, Verley, and Max Scherzer at the time. And then obviously the Angels kind of became that team. You sign Dan Herron, you sign C.J. Wilson, you have Jared Weaver, you sign Josh Hamilton, you sign Albert Pujols. I mean, that was supposed to be the team, and it floundered and went up in flames and amounted to nothing. So I don't know that is one of those things that will really hit hard on Scioscia's legacy, just because, at some point it's just a matter of how well these guys gel. But do I think he's a Hall of Famer off the top of my mind right now? On the cusp, maybe. And maybe after, 5-6 years, maybe he gets a chance to get in, how the voting goes. But I've got a hard time, really putting my stamp saying yes.
As do I. And I don't even think that having more wins than other managers who are in the Hall of Fame necessarily. I think win-loss record is a bad way to judge a manager overall. Because a lot of things go into every baseball game. A lot of things go into every win and every loss. So to lay wins at the feet of a manager and losses at the feet of a manager every single time, I think you're right. I don't think that it's enough to make him a Hall of Famer.
To go from one eyebrow-raising story to another, one for a very vastly different reason. The Houston Astros activated after acquiring Roberto Osuna from the Blue Jays, a closer that the ball club, I don't understand why they felt the need to bring him in, number one. They were one of the best teams in baseball. They didn't need to sign him. If they were ignorant enough to think that signing him wasn't going to cause this kind of media backlash, I don't know how you can be that smart as far as baseball stuff goes and be that ignorant to where culture is now. Those of you who don't know, Roberto Osuna just finished up I believe a 75 game suspension battle. You have to pick me up.
75 games, yes.
Okay. For violation of the domestic violence policy of Major League Baseball. The investigation is still ongoing. There is still not a ton known, at least not in most outlets known about what was going on. But the way it's going to sit in the clubhouse because of some comments made by a couple of, World Series winners, that's going to make everything. And he addressed the ball club, but there is a little bit more to that.
Right. And so the Astros released a very lengthy statement regarding the signing of Roberto Osuna. And it all boils down to just double talk and sort of a way for them to kind of cover up this idea that they're not sacrificing their integrity in order to win ball games. And to be honest with you, I don't think that Roberto Osuna even necessarily helps them win ball games. Not right out of the gate. The guy hasn't played in a long time, and I think that's going to work against him, actually, as we move forward. But they wrote this whole one-page statement about Roberto Osuna. It all boils down to the guy throws 95 plus. If he didn't throw 95 plus, this wouldn't be happening. Their statement can be encapsulated in that single sentence. The guy throws 95 plus, period. But that's not good enough for people like Justin Verlander. It's not good enough for people like Lance McCullers because in their opinion, Roberto Osuna doesn't have any business being on a major league roster. And in fact, Justin Verlander just this year has, well, sort of blown up someone with an arrest record and a suspension for domestic violence, in which Justin Verlander says, and I quote, "Bleep that guy. I hope your life without baseball is, I can't even explain. So I'm trying to say this without following all the curse words that Verlander. I'm trying to edit this on the fly, but it was basically bleep you, man.
Yeah, he gave the middle finger emoji saying, so bleep you, man, into the extent of hope your life is great without baseball. You deserve every bit of BS that comes your way.
Right.
You piece of crap.
Right. And then, Lance McCullers followed up with a very sobering sort of and mature reminder of this is what, domestic violence looks like. This is what it is. This is how we see this is the victims and the outcomes. And he was very mature about the whole thing. But at the same time, he was very negative towards their teammate who was suspended and then had his contract removed. Now, this is a single A guy who was arrested for domestic violence and suspended, and he no longer has a baseball career. And then, they go to interview Justin Verlander about the Roberto Osuna signing, and he goes, "Well, I know I've made some inflammatory comments about this recently." Yeah, I stand by that.
Understatement of the year to Justin Verlander.
Yeah, inflammatory. I think when you say, "Hey, bleep you, man," that's a little more than just inflammatory.
And owner Jim Crane, general manager Jeff Lunau, of the Astros, spoke as well during the closed door meeting. Ozuna talked for about 10 minutes. Again, refused to comment on what's happening. Has refused to comment to media. He has a trial date set for September 5th up in Toronto. But the GM Lunau said, quote, "It was not an easy decision for us to come to as an organization. But based on all the information that we have, we believe Roberto deserves a second chance. Jim and I both communicated that to the players. Each player is going to have to make up his own mind over time. I believe Roberto has gotten off to a good start. He met everybody today, and I think that our clubhouse is going to give him a chance to be part of this team to help us win." Close quote. Manager A.J. Hinch began, at least according to what he told reporters, he began the meeting by telling Ozuna how lucky he was to quote, "join this culture, this clubhouse, this collection of guys that are sitting around in the room that I believe are second to none," close quote.
Wow. That says a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. A manager has to be up on his guys. He has to take his guys very seriously. And he has to be sort of upbeat and that sort of thing. But to tell a guy that, hey, you're lucky to be on this team.
Yeah.
As opposed to, hey, you're a good damn baseball player and we're lucky to have you.
For the record, it was good, comma, damn baseball player, just for anybody who happens to be listening and realizes that we speak very fast when it's late at night. I want to specify that for all of our little ears.
Most coaches would go that route. Hey, you know what? You're a good baseball player. You throw real hard. You're going to be a great reliever for us. We're lucky to have you. When a manager looks at you and says, "You're lucky to be here," regardless of when he's talking, whatever he says after that is secondary. When he says, you're lucky to be here, you know exactly what he means.
Right. And kudos to AJ Hinch. It's why he is a respected manager. He's a World Series winner. Has a good pulse of that clubhouse. It's something that we use a lot. But, hey, look, I know most of my guys don't want you here. I ain't saying I want you here, but you're here. You're you're gonna handle it the right way. These are the guys. You better be thankful that you at least are getting a shot on a team that has a chance.
I'm going to tell you like this. Do I think personally that Roberto Osuna needs to have a job right now in Major League Baseball? No, I don't. He's not the type of reliever. Wrong sport. Sorry.
Someone's got fantasy draft on the mind.
Yeah, I do. Couple weeks, man. He's not the kind of reliever that is a difference maker for this team. If you're not the kind of player,
they didn't need him.
Right.
That's the mind-blowing thing. They didn't need him.
If you're not the kind of player that is going to be the difference between another World Series title and second place, then it's not worth giving up your integrity as a ball club to pick him up. This is a guy who was being looked at by the Los Angeles Dodgers, who then said, you know what? That's not acceptable to us. That's not acceptable on this team, in this culture. Pass. The Los Angeles Dodgers passed on Aroldis Chapman for the same reason 3 years ago. Can you imagine where the Los Angeles Dodgers might be with a closer like Aroldis Chapman? But for them, their integrity was more important than winning a World Series title. In my opinion, if a guy like Ozuna isn't the difference, even if he is the difference, but if he's not especially, what are you doing?
Well said. I've got nothing to add. I think we've pretty much said at this point all that really needs to be said on the matter. So with that, I think we'll, as easily as we can, I will ask you, the teacher, to go ahead and get your whipping pen out, your grading pen, maybe your grading stamp. That's a story for a different time. And let's go ahead and let's grade some trades. How about that? We're not going to go through every team. Some teams made bigger moves. Hell, we have some moves that are happening now with the waiver deadline. Mike Fiers finally got moved from, I believe, from the Tigers. The Oakland Athletics pick him up. I like that they are making a move. Adeiny Hechavarria to the Pirates from the Rays. He has struggled mightily, as well as the Nationals' Greg Holland finally agreeing to a deal. Battle, you tell me, where do you want to start? We have a couple of moves that got made around the big leagues. Let's take a look at them and let's see what do we think that's going to lead us?
Let's start with the biggest move of the summer at this point, right? The Los Angeles Dodgers pick up Manny Machado to shore up that infield, but not just Manny Machado. So, yes, with the injury to Seager, they needed the shortstop help. Absolutely. Which begs the question, what do they do if they are able to woo Manny Machado into a contract in 2019? But that's a story for a different day. They needed the shortstop help. But it is no secret that they also needed help at second base. So they pick up a veteran in Brian Dozier and one of the biggest name, and don't get me wrong, the guy's having a fantastic year too. One of the biggest names, one of the best players in baseball, Manny Machado at shortstop. Absolutely the biggest move of the season belongs to them at this point, only because nobody decided to go after DeGrom in New York.
Right.
But the pickup to me seems, when you hear it, you're like, oh, they picked up Manny Machado to shore up that Seager injury. That's an A+ trade. Now hold on. And Dozier, that seems like an A-plus trade too. He's an all-star, great second baseman.
The names sound great.
Right. Great clubhouse guy, right? Veteran ball player, good for a young team. But since the pickups, they have still only managed to play .500 baseball. And in my opinion, to make those trades worthwhile, they have to increase the winning percentage of that team by at least a third. If the Dodgers aren't at 7-3 in their last 10 over the next 6 weeks, over their next 50 games, if they can't win 70% or at least 65% of their games through the remaining 50 so games of the season, those trades are not worth it. I give them a B+. I mean, what else can you do? Those are the biggest names, and these are guys that you're renting for a year. So
Right.
You're giving up prospects to rent these guys for a year. That better pay dividends.
Yeah, and I think the thing here, like you mentioned, I mean, they grabbed Dozier, they trade Logan Forsythe. Forsythe never really had he didn't have the same production with which we thought he would from what we have seen, what we've seen in Tampa. But again, Dozier this year is hitting .231. He's a career .248 hitter. Hit .271 last year, .268 the year prior, the two best years of his career to this point. What helps you is the guy's 31 years old. He's a veteran, but he's still relatively young, in major league time. He's owed $9 million this year, so Dodgers on the hook for roughly just under 4.5, most likely.
Well, maybe not. It's a wash because Logan Forsythe is also a $9 million a year guy, so it's a wash between the two of them.
Right, and that's kind of my thing with these two guys is, with Machado, there is an expectation, but at the end of the day, it's still one guy getting 3 to 4 at-bats per game. The idea of bringing him in, I still love the move. But that move has to work with other pieces around him stepping up. And that, I think, is really where we're struggling at the moment is those other guys, Bellinger, still not getting totally hot. There's just just not everyone is gelling yet. I do believe that the Dodgers will end up taking this division. I like the trade, but I will grade it at this point until I begin to see just a little bit, better production. Because, man, Max Muncy, the way he was playing, I'm not sure. Do you put Dozier in on top of him? I think you kind of like what you're seeing from Muncy. So right now, I think this is a moment where you really see what you got. You made a big move to get Machado. If you can woo him and keep him long-term, great. I will give this move a B+.
And that's exactly where I'm at. I mean, what are you going to do? You gotta win something with these guys. Otherwise, it's not worth having. And I'll tell you right now, I'm willing to come back and reduce the grade on this trade if the Dodgers don't win the division.
Yes. Yeah. Because at that point, you're giving things up. The likelihood, maybe Machado stays if you can really get him to enjoy the LA nightlife.
I think that LA is a big enough market for Machado.
Well, yeah. I mean, he doesn't have much of a place right now in New York.
He's not going to New York. There's no room for him.
Unless they move on from Andujar, which could be.
They got Gleyber Torres. I mean,
I know.
Where are they going?
I agree.
One guy who's young and controllable and probably a perennial all-star and is going to be cheap for the next 6 years to another. And you're gonna take both of those guys and you're gonna put Manny Machado in the mix. It's going to cost you $15 or $20 or $25 million a year, maybe even more.
I'm with you.
I don't think so. So here's the head scratcher for me. Exactly why do the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are, if I'm not mistaken at this point, in 4th place in the National League Central, why do they need Chris Archer?
2 words. Well, technically 3, but I'll throw a contraction in there. He's controllable. I mean, that's really it, isn't it? You trade Garrett Cole. You need an ace. Again, Chris Archer, great name.
Right.
Chris Archer has not been pitching the way that he is. His numbers are not indicative of the player that he is thought to be. Fair?
More than fair. I was just about to ask you if Chris Archer was even an ace anymore.
Not right now. No.
Any team in the league with an ace? Let's look at him. Is he a number one on?
You could trade Rick Porcello from the Red Sox, who you could say is either a 2 or 3, as either a 2 behind Sale or a 3 behind Sale in price. Put him in Pittsburgh, and Porcello becomes your ace over Chris Archer, in my opinion.
I completely and totally agree. Porcello is the better pitcher and has proven that this year. He's having a phenomenal year, a better year than I think you and I gave him credit
One hit the Yanks over the weekend when they got swept by the Red Sox.
Right. One hit the Yanks. He's having a better year than I think either you or I gave him credit for, or gave him.
It's just great to see him bounce back. He wins the Cy Young 2 years ago, struggled mightily last year. It's nice to see him pitching in a way that that we wanted to see consistently.
I agree, and it is good to see. He's the ace in that ball club in the Pirates clubhouse, no matter what, over Chris Archer. But I mean, there are number 2s in the league that I think are aces over Chris Archer that are just playing behind really great pitchers.
The Astros come to mind.
Right.
That's a whole different
story.
story.
Of the first 4 pitchers in that rotation.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Are the ace on that Pirates ball club over Chris Archer. Right. That rotation's stupid.
Right.
But my question is what they gave up for him, right? They're going to get an outfielder in Austin Meadows, who was at one point this year a top outfield prospect. He's going to be an everyday outfielder at some point in his career. He's not going to be an all-star. He's slumping right now, but he's going to be an everyday utility type ball player. They get Tyler Glasnow, a right-handed pitcher. Last year, he was a top pitching prospect. Now, he's lost his rookie status.
He's 3-11 over his career, the 5.74 career ERA.
Right, and so he did really well in AAA. He was a top prospect. He came up to the big club. It didn't pan out the way they would have hoped.
Right.
He lost his rookie status, a little bit of his shine, and he does have some control issues. But he's a big guy, right? He's a 6'8", 220-pound right-handed pitcher who can throw the ball a ton.
Sure.
There's an upside there. And the Rays are going to get that, and they're going to get to apply that pitching coach staff to him. And then they also get a player to be named later, which could be a draft prospect later, next year in the Major League Baseball draft.
Right.
And is all of that worth a used to could ace that you can control for 3 more years?
Well, I mean, I think what works out for both of these ball clubs is pricing, right? You're paying less than $1 million to these 2 guys that the Rays are getting. You're at that point now where you're not going to get the same haul for him that maybe you could have gotten last year. Even then, last year he has struggled. He hasn't had an ERA below 4. What is it, since 2016?
Yeah,
2016 he had a 4.02. Last year a 4.07. This year a 4.40 ERA. He hasn't had a winning record since 2014.
And he's given up the long ball left and right.
Yes. I mean, he's got 12 dingers this year so far. He up 30 in 2016, 27 last year. And you're not, I mean, he's getting you 200 innings. He's hit the 200 mark in 15, 16, and 17. But here's where it kind of comes in nice for the Pirates. Get a chance to see what your pitching coach, what your training staff can do with him.
And there's also the change of scenery factor.
Right. He's owed $7.6 million next year. Not bad. I mean, a little bit more than what a veteran would get. Not a Chase Utley vet to make $2 million, the vet minimum, but a guy like maybe a Jose Bautista might get a 4 or 5 million, something like that. But then in 2020, it's $9 million. In 21, it's $11 million, but there's a $1.75 million buyout in 2020 and a $250,000 buyout at the beginning of 2021. So, yes, you have him in control because both the options are team options. So Archer is yours to do with what you want for the next 3.5 years if you so desire. That works out fantastic for them overall, because if you do manage to find a way to put him back in a rotation, he'd be good, then hey, you know what? You give up a very little amount and get a pretty good return on your investment. But until I see that investment begin to come back and show positive return, I'm at a C. It's an average trade. You're getting a pitcher who's got great upside for not too much to lose. And if you end up coming out on top, hey, you didn't lose much, and and you won pretty well. I'll grade it a C.
Final grade for me is a little more gloomy. I'm going to put this one at a C-. It's an average trade, but barely, because you're giving up guys who, while they might not be top prospects, this third player to be named later could be. And these are guys who are controllable for 6 years. Guys who are in the beginning of their careers, who are not going to get to arbitration for a further 3 years, which is the same amount of time that you have control over Chris Archer. That whole time, you're paying these guys $500,000 a year. If they pan out, they pan out. If they don't, they don't. But meanwhile, you're paying Chris Archer $8.5 million a year. So I'm going to give this a C- with a complete ability to turn around and say, hey, by the way, this turned out well for them. Maybe it's a B trade.
I think the biggest trade that did not involve Manny Machado has to go through the Brewers. The Brewers made some really nice acquisitions. They pick up Jonathan Scope, as well as Luis Ortiz. Also picked up Mike Moustakas from Kansas City. I think it's a good chance to get. I think Moustakas has deserved to get moved from the get-go. I've been saying that. Almost every show this year, he was the one guy I expected to be moved. It's a good chance for Jonathan Villar and Jonathan Scope to get, a different, like you said, change of scenery. I think it's a great chance for the Brewers to add some pop in that lineup. Back up Lorenzo Cain, Yelich, and Eric Thames. Is it going to be an earth-shattering type of deal? Not, probably not. But this is one of those things right now where Scope is hitting 235 this year, well below his average, hit 293 last year. Hasn't been below 267 in the last 3 years. So I think this is one of those moments where, Jonathan Villar was good, but he's hitting 274 this year. We saw struggles last year. I think they see more upside in Scope.
I think everybody sees more upside in Scope. To be honest, the guy hits a ton when he wants to, or when he's on, and you add the fact that you added Mike Moustakas, who could also be a really big bat and a really big piece for that team, to the Scope deal. And let's not forget, yeah, he's slumping. Yeah, he's having an issue with his batting average right now, but those numbers are rising. In July, the guy's got a 1056 OPS. This is more indicative of who Jonathan Scope is, with his 841 OPS from 2017 and 32 dingers, by the way, last year also. It's more indicative of who he is, and I think that the change of scenery is going to be good for him. Moving into that National League Central is going to be good for him. He's going to see a whole new group of pitchers. He's going to see a whole new group of ball players in there. Yeah, he's going to have to see the Cubs a bunch. Yeah, he's going to have to see the Cardinals a bunch. But maybe that's good for him. You know, maybe that change of scenery is good for him. And it gives, when you talk about Jesus Aguilar, Travis Shaw, and Mike Moustakas all playing two or more positions in the infield, it gives the Brewers an opportunity to platoon the infield. And that could be huge for them going into a race against the Cubs for the National League Central. I'm at a strong B+, maybe even an A- on this trade, to be honest.
I'm actually going to go A- on this. I agree with you there. Moustakas is really playing his career numbers, hitting 248. He's a 251 career hitter. He's got 21 dingers so far on the year. They needed to go ahead and get someone to really get on that third base side. The Royals did a great job making him marketable, working him at third, working him at first. He can play the corners. I think this is a great move for.
He can play second.
Yes, he can play second. I like this for Milwaukee. I think you're going to see Moustakas kind of get re-energized, being in a ball club that's independent race. He's been to 2 World Series. He's won 1. This is going to be a great move for them. I go A- here.
I completely agree. Absolutely, completely agree. Let's talk about some
more. Let's save the Wilson Ramos trade for when he gets back. Something to look at. I think we both like the move, but until we know how much he can contribute, the move kind of is a moot move, if you will.
Sure.
So let's go ahead and hold off on that. We'll look at that in a couple of weeks when he is back. But Chris missed it last month. I had to do them all by myself, which is great because he couldn't argue with me. But we're going to have some fun. It is time for this month's. It is August 6th, the August Power Rankings from here at Out of Left Field and the Grueling Truth Network at Grueling Truth on Twitter, thegruelingtruth.net, and, of course, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham, our Facebook page at OO Left Field, our Twitter page. Chris, let's take a look at those power rankings, and let's have a little fun, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. So the obvious, the number one absolute world beaters in the league right now are the Boston Red Sox. They're killing it. There's no other way to put it. Swept the New York Yankees in what you and I both consider to be the defining series of the National League, the American League East.
I think so.
I think it puts the Yankees 9.5 games back. In my opinion, with Judge out until September, the Yankees don't get back within 3.
Can we stop for a moment and just take a look at the surroundings right now? Last year at this time, the divisions were done, right?
Right.
Everyone knew it was over. This year, the only division that you can still not totally safely say is done is the AL East. Everything else is wide open. I know you're going to go, hold on. About the AL West.
Well,
but
no, it's the AL Central. It's the AL Central that's not wide open. The AL Central's done. There's not a single team over 500 except the Indians, and the Indians are only successful because they're the only team over 500.
So I think we're still safe to mark the Houston Astros as the second best team in the game.
I think so.
that has been that way for quite a while. You could have probably made a couple of arguments that they were the best team in baseball, at times.
Right. In individual small increments.
Right.
In individual series.
Here's where the fun begins. Who do you have at 3?
Well, we have the New York Yankees at 3, but
Who's at 4?
The Oakland A's.
Flip-flop? Question mark?
So here's the deal. The Oakland A's have made a huge jump. The Oakland A's made a huge jump from 10 on your last power ranking to 4 on the current power ranking. They're one win behind the New York Yankees, and only behind them by virtue of the fact that they've played 4 or 5 more games because the Yankees have been rained out.
And they're only, 3.5 or 4 behind the Astros?
They're 4 games behind the Houston Astros, and the Yankees are 9.5 back of the best team in the league, the Boston Red Sox. By the way,
I know neither of us thought we could legitimately make this claim this year. I was excited to see what this ball club could do. I think we could safely and legitimately make the case the Oakland Athletics are the 3rd best team in Major League Baseball right now.
Here's my hot take. Right now, today, August 6, 2018, the New York Yankees are the 3rd best team in baseball. If by August 20th, they haven't turned around this slide that they're on, the Oakland Athletics are without a doubt the 3rd best team in baseball.
I see you and I raise you. Even if the Yankees can get some firm footing back in place, if the A's continue to stay on a torrid tear, I would still put them above the Yankees.
So how about this? August 12th. Sunday, August 12th. You and I have this conversation again. 6 days from now.
2 weeks.
2 weeks? Okay, so we're back to the 27th.
Because Mike fires with the trade coming over from Detroit, you got to see how well he plays into that rotation.
So we're the 19th now.
Yeah.
August 19th, 2018. We have this conversation again. If the Yankees, whether or not the Yankees right the ship, if the A's are still on a tear, if they're still within a game of the Yanks, and if they're still within 3 or 4 games of the Astros, I think you're right.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, waiting to see how the Yankees respond to the loss of Aaron Judge is the only thing that's giving me pause right now.
Hey, they had a 4-1 lead in Boston last night, and they lost in the 10th inning. They had a 4-1 lead in the bottom of the 9th.
Yeah, I got that notification. I was a bit. So, is it bad that I sort of celebrate that?
That's why you're the favorite son of the family.
Well, I like it. So we'll revisit this in 2 weeks, and only the 3 and 4 slot. If we think that it bears switching, we do it.
Everything else waits until next month.
Yes. So you obviously know who we have at 3 and 4. We've had the conversation. Number 5, I think, is going to be a bit of a shock. We have the Milwaukee Brewers at number 5.
And I think those trades that we mentioned really, that's kind of what helps. Because, yes, we're talking about.
But I have a question.
But this plays into it.
I have a question. Does the play and the persistence of the Philadelphia Phillies warrant a top 5 placing?
No, because they're so hot and cold. I mean, the Phillies are that. To me,
for full disclosure,
are that Royals team from 13, 14, 15, who were so young and dumb and didn't really know what the hell was going on, that they had that good of a bullpen and they would just blow the doors off of you because they were that young and powerful. I don't think the Phillies have totally grabbed their identity yet, but I think that they're all the tumblers are turning and falling into place. And once that safe cracks, that's going to be a scary team.
For full disclosure, I will tell you right now that ESPN has put Philadelphia in their top 5 in the power rankings. But we can only go off of what we see, right? You and I analyze baseball differently than ESPN does.
Right.
But ESPN has put Philadelphia in their top 5. I think maybe we could make a case to flip 6 and 7.
I agree. I was just going to say I could make the argument to put the Cubs at 7 and the Phillies at 6. Right now we have the Cubs at 6. And you know what? With the way the Cubs pitching is, I mean, with just how shoddy that stuff is, what the hell, man? On the fly, it's our show. Do it. So we have the Brewers at 5, the Phillies at 6, and the Chicago Cubs now at 7.
Seattle's number 8. I think that's a solid choice. I think it's easy to put Seattle above LA.
Yeah, they're still hanging around. They have a more defined direction right now than what the Dodgers do. But as we said, if those trades begin to pan out and things begin to gel together, the Dodgers are going to jump where the Athletics did in our rankings for September.
But again, if the defensive prowess of Cameron Maybin pays out for the Mariners, it's going to be a big deal for them too.
It will. It will. I mean, and I think that Maybin coming in, that is a real shock to the system of Robinson Cano, because there's no telling how he's really going to be used in the little bit of time that he will have back with that ball club. Do they use him kind of a platoon player with Nelson Cruz at DH, maybe here and there at second? But right now, D. Gordon is eating up that second base position in Seattle and getting Maybin, a guy who has some great speed. We've watched him play, I think, in Detroit. I know I watched him play with LA. Well, with LA last year, and then was it Miami or Tampa that traded?
They got him from Miami.
Okay, yeah. So I watched him play in Tampa last year with the Angels. I mean, and his bat's nothing that you really makes you go ooh and ah, but he's got some really good feet out there in center field. So he can get to the ball quickly, takes really good lines, makes good direction, good directional choices on how to get to a ball, and he can run a good one down in the gap for you.
And if you're in a position where you can keep D. Gordon at second base, I mean, do you lose Robbie Cano's bat? Sure. But is Robbie Cano's bat going to take you into the postseason? No, because he's not eligible.
Right. It still hasn't.
Right, exactly. Number 9, Los Angeles Dodgers. Expect that to change. I expect that to change in a big way. I think the Dodgers are going to be.
It has to in one way or the other. I mean, you can't stay playing 500 baseball, even with Jake Lamb out in Arizona. It's not a huge loss because he hasn't been playing well this year at all because of the wrist injury. They can't keep playing middle-of-the-road baseball. They've got to make a choice which way they're going to go. I think this will be a defining moment in Dave Roberts' tenure. Right now they sit at 9. It's going to be, we've got to see a move made by them here.
Right. Cleveland at number 10, this was a difficult decision for us because we're in a position now where we're choosing at 10 and 11, where we're choosing 2 teams who are division leaders that neither of us think are going to be contenders in the postseason.
And I think big picture, I think you and I both really believe the Diamondbacks to be a better of the two teams.
Right.
But Cleveland is going to win that division. Granted, most of it being a product of the division they play in.
Right.
But I mean, when you look at, they have the Klubers, you have the Lindors. I mean, they have some really good pieces. It's just a matter of will all those pieces find their way to come back together and find the right footing for the postseason.
Right. And I don't think that either of us have the trust in Arizona to either win that division or go deep in the playoffs. And to be honest, if Arizona doesn't win that division, I don't think they go to the playoffs.
Agreed. I think we both have agreed that and that was what we discussed on the last show. The NL East and the NL Central will provide us the two wild card spots for the National League.
Right.
Come October.
Number 12, one of those wild card contenders in Atlanta. I think that's a solid spot for them. I think that if they go to the postseason, it'll be as a wild card. I don't think that they're going to beat the Philadelphia Phillies out for that division.
I picked them. They picked up Kevin Gausman and Darren O'Day. We didn't discuss the trades. They needed a couple more arms. If those guys can make the difference, we have seen Philly be spotty. It's possible. They're hanging on. They're still there. Not like the Nationals. But right now, the Braves are sitting back there right now, kind of just they need to get their wheels under them and start moving forward.
At 13, we have the one National League West team that I think has the pieces in place if they get hot enough to make a wild card run in Colorado. You got all those big names in Arenado and Blackman and
even possibly a divisional run. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, and they very well could.
I mean, we've seen these ball clubs jump so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they shift from first to fourth in this division. It's, and they're only 2 games out of the 62 and 62 tie that the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks are in right now. So each of those two teams with 62 wins, the Rockies with 59 wins. Every team, with the exception of the San Diego Padres in the National League West, is playing above 500 baseball. It's an interesting sort of mix in there, but none of them, despite all of them playing above 500 baseball, none of them are really playing at the caliber of some of the other National League teams in other divisions. Pittsburgh at number 14. Pittsburgh's another one of those teams where if the Chris Archer moves pans out for them, some of these other things that they're doing solidify for them. They have Marte in center full time this year now that he's back, and the grudge for the suspension is over. He's eligible for the postseason. If they make a move, if Chris Archer pans out, they could possibly take one of those wild card spots, but they're not winning that division. I don't think that's within their wheelhouse. St. Louis, number 15. Again, they got to beat the Cubs. They got to beat the Brewers. I don't think they're going to do it.
I think you could possibly, again, flip these two for us because they made the move for Archer, and there is the possibility that he finds himself in a productive role. We give the nod to Pitt.
At number 16, Tampa Bay.
This hurts because they just got swept by the White Sox.
Right. But any given series, right?
Right.
Tampa Bay Rays at number 16. They made some moves.
They're still an overachieving ball club.
Right. They made some moves. They picked up pieces. They're playing 500 baseball. Not what you expected from this team at the beginning of the year. I think neither of us expected 500 baseball from this team at the beginning of the year. But the fact remains that if they're out of the top 15, their postseason hopes are slim to none, especially being that they're in the AL East.
Weren't they slim to none at like the tail end of March?
Sure. Number 17, San Francisco. San Francisco is another one of these teams that's playing above 500 baseball. They're overachieving for the division that they're in. They're overachieving in general. They're 5
Cueto
games
having
out.
TJ.
What's that?
Cueto having TJ.
Cueto's having Tommy John. Not that really hurts him because he's only started like 7 times all year anyway. So, but they're only 5 games out of first place. They're playing above 500 baseball at 505. They're 5-5 in their last 10. So, they're playing exactly 500 baseball right now.
They didn't make any moves. They know. I think that this ball club knows what their future is.
Right.
Their future is not this year. They held pat. I like them. I like the choice. Sometimes the most prudent choice is to do nothing.
And they have a lot. They still, after everything that they've done, after all the bring-ups, after all the call-ups, after 3 World Series, after everything, they still have a very strong farm system in Northern California. And I think that's going to continue on for several years. They're making a lot of moves at the lower levels that are going to set them up for success in the future, especially this new catcher, this guy Ray Black, a reliever for them who gave up a 3-run shot in his first appearance, has had like 7 or 8 or 9 appearances since then, has not given up a hit in those appearances. The guy throws 95 plus. He's the answer to the Strickland problem, in my opinion. I look for the Giants to be doing something in the next 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And
the
number
Angels at 18. I think that's a pretty easy spot for them. They would have been much higher. That's to no fault of their own. They got bitten by the injury bug. It happens. Unfortunately for them, it was that year. I hope Scioscia stays. The Nationals at 19. This is just a dumpster fire.
A dumpster fire that they're trying to put out with gasoline.
Yeah, I get you don't want to move Harper. You want to try and keep him. And you know what? Maybe you do. Maybe he just loves that city and loves where he's at. It does help. For me, I think that he's not going to really be a good fit in New York. We'll see what happens. But, again, Washington there. Toronto at 20, I mean, that's just its own little thing. Once you get to the final 10, you never know what's going to happen. But Toronto at the final at 20. Minnesota is at 21. Man, the one that kind of gets us here, I like, is actually having Cincinnati at 22. I like the fact that they're a team that really has been playing right about 500 baseball since they moved on from Brian Price. Not saying Riggleman is going to retain his job there, but he has done a nice job with that ball club. The Rangers at 23, the Tigers at 24. Is there much we can say about that?
There's going to be some pushback on that, I think, ranking the Rangers over the Tigers. But let's be honest. What have the Tigers done except go into full rebuild mode?
Right.
The Rangers haven't done that. They should be a better team.
Well, I don't know. Once you move from Cole Hamels, they didn't move Adrian Beltre. I kind of, unless Beltre didn't want to be moved, I would have liked to see him get a chance to go somewhere else where he could get a ring again. But, it is what it is. The Marlins are – they're better than we thought they would be. From 26 on down, we could put these 5 teams on a couple of dice and just play Yahtzee, and from there to kind of figure out who's going to be, who's going to go from 26 on down. The Mets, to me at this point, the Mets at least are still trying to win. I guess they're playing some semblance of baseball that. They're trying to be competitive. They held on to DeGrom, held on to Syndergaard. Surprisingly, have held on to Jose Bautista, who has played surprisingly decent since he got signed by New York. There is talk of him being moved in the waiver trades, but then possibly being re-signed by the Mets into next season.
Has played surprisingly well, especially after his sort of ignominious dismissal from the Braves. Which was rough. Nobody wants to be in that position where they're like, hey, I was a top probably 20 or 25 ball player 3 years ago, and now I'm getting cut from the Atlanta Braves.
To round it out, San Diego Padres 27, the White Sox 28, the Royals 29, and the Orioles are 30. Those are the out of left field power rankings. What do you guys think? Let us know. At OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field, Chris and Graham. Our Facebook page, drop us a message. Tell us where your team should be. Do you like them there? Do you not like them there? Should we move them around? That is for you to tell us and us to decide if we like it or not.
Right. Well, exactly. I mean, we're not going to let you tell us what we're going to do on the show, but we'll give you a little bit of input.
If you tell me the red should be 15, I might have to politely decline. But you give me a reason, hey, maybe the Rockies should be 12.
Right. Exactly. Let's do it. Are the Rockies better than the Diamondbacks?
Could be. Guys, again, plenty more to get to in the coming weeks. The waiver trade deadline still in the middle up until the end of the month, basically, meaning, as we said, we would just make sure you guys understand what's going to happen here. A team can put any player on waivers. If they clear waivers, then they can be DFA, demoted, whatever it might be. However, for I believe it's 48 and a half hours, kind of an odd frame there, but any team can make a claim on a player on waivers. If a team makes a claim, the player's current team has three choices. A, remove the waiver and they can keep the player. They can allow the claiming team to just have him and absorb the salary, or they can negotiate a trade. Think doesn't happen very often? Think again. Justin Verlander last year moved on a waiver trade. Could very easily happen. It can lead to some really big moves near the tail end of August, and it still means those players are playoff eligible. That is the biggest piece.
Right. Well, I think that the question coming down or going into next week is going to be, for me anyway, is going to see how all of these trades start to pan out over the next 6 or 7 games. Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't see into the future, so we're not going to know anything about that until we come back next time right here on Out of Left Field. For Graham, I'm Chris, and for everyone at the Grueling Truth Network, thank you for tuning in to Out of Left Field, and we'll see you next week.